We are going to learn a lot about the Atlanta Falcons early in 2026 season with primetime matchups, divisional games. Will the Kevin Stefanski-led Falcons rise up to fly high, or will they crash and burn?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to Locked On Falcons. I am your humble host, Aaron Freeman. Been covering the Falcons for 2 decades. Spent one of those decades here as the illustrious host of this daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. And on today's daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, I am joined by none other than Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta and Locked On Georgia Tech. We will be reacting to the Falcons 2026 regular season schedule. Now, if you're looking for a win-loss prediction, you've come to the wrong place. That will be coming later in the summer as we get closer to the regular season. But if you're looking for insightful analysis into all 17 of these games with the usual, allure that Jarvis and I put on these things, key matchups, storylines, narratives, we'll talk a little bit about whether or not the Falcons, what time will the Falcons make the switch from Tua to Michael Penix, if they need to make the switch at all, and sort of some of the things that we expect to see and learn all about this team along the way. But Jarvis, jumping right into it, we talked about this on Thursday's Falcon Squad show, but the expectation was that they would open the season on the road with the Steelers. Given the leaks that proved to be true. We talked about it, 2 kind of evenly matched teams, new coaches, with Mike McCarthy taking over for Mike Tomlin, Kevin Stefanski taking over for Raheem Morris. The last time we played the Steelers here in Atlanta, it was kind of a story of like, oh, the Falcons spent all the money on Kirk Cousins and the Steelers spent none of it on Russell Wilson. And unfortunately for the Falcons, the cheaper quarterback won out. Will we see a repeat of history with Tua Tagovailoa starting for the Falcons? But to me, more importantly, Jarvis, when I think back to that Steelers game, that was the game, the infamous Bruno game, as we refer to it here on Locked On Falcons, that we don't talk about, where the game plan from Zach Robinson was not great. We talked about, how they handled the TJ Watt, the lack of play action, all the things that it made us go, I don't know if Zach Robinson's the guy that we thought he was going to be. And I think we'll kind of get another litmus test to see what Tommy Rees is in terms of if he can come up with a better game plan, especially given that he's seen the Steelers a number of times these last couple of years in Cleveland. But your thoughts on that week 1 matchup against the Steelers?
I think it's going to be interesting. I really feel like we're not going to be able to get a good feel on how this game could potentially go until Mr. Rogers figures out what he wants to do with his life. He doesn't know if he wants to do mushrooms for the rest of his life and act like he's married and has a girlfriend, or he just want to just come out and be free willy-nilly, man, and just come out and play some ball. See, I thought you thought I was gonna go somewhere else. Nah, I ain't doing that, man. Ain't going there. We're talking ball here. So yeah, Aaron Rodgers needs to come on out and say, hey, man, I want to play ball, or hey, I'm gonna hang it up. And I think that when you look at what he brings to the table, obviously he's not the guy that he used to be in multiple MVPs and all of that stuff, Super Bowl winning quarterback. But you at least have to have a little bit of fear, just a little bit, because he can tap into that thing from time to time. And we saw that even last year, when he was at the quarterback position. So I think that overall, the Falcons should be in a good place because they're better defensively than they were in 2024, even though they only gave up 18 points. If you give up 18 points, you should be able to win the game. Offense should be able to score 3 touchdowns a game. Like average offenses score 3 touchdowns a game, and they weren't able to figure out how to do that. But I think that the Falcons should be in a good spot with this game, but I think that they can be in an even better spot once Aaron Rodgers figures out what he wants to do with his life.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm sure we'll spend that week leading up to that game previewing how the Falcons can learn how to block TJ Watt. Just chip him, maybe. We'll see. But
breathe on him. Maybe that'll slow him down. Touch him.
You talked about dangerous quarterbacks, and there's no more dangerous quarterback on the planet when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons than Bryce Young, who the Falcons face in week 2 at home. great opportunity for the Falcons to get that monkey off their back. I believe it's 3 or 4 consecutive wins for Bryce Young against the Atlanta Falcons heading into week 2. So really golden opportunity for them to start off their hopeful race to the playoffs with a big win at home in week 2. Thoughts on that?
Man, like, can you put some pressure on the quarterback? It just seems like the Falcons just go dormant when it comes to putting pressure on this young man, because it's very clear if you put pressure on him, he will fold because he's not the biggest guy in the world. And when he's upright, he's proved that he can be a viable quarterback, especially when he's playing against the Falcons. So I think this is going to be one of those games where you look at it and say, all right, let's get some pressure on the quarterback, preferably rushing 4, and, have Jessie Bates, Mr. Man, play around a little bit back there and take another one to the house. So, I think those are one of the things that has to be part of the game plan, because this Bryce Young stuff has to stop, because Carolina Panthers fans are so annoying. So annoying. We live rent-free in their heads. So they're always thinking about us. They're always trying to figure out how to start a conversation with us. But this would be one of those games where, let's break the streak. 'Cause I'm tired of Bryce Young looking like he can play NFL football.
Yes, rushing 4 would be a good strategy. It's something the Falcons have not employed the last 2 times they faced the Panthers. But getting into the next 3 games, because what's interesting about these 3 games is these are all primetime games in week 3 at the Packers, Thursday Night Football, week 4 at the Saints, Monday Night Football, week 5 at home against the Ravens on Sunday Night Football. And obviously, one of the things that you can say positively about Raheem Morris during his 2-year stint in Atlanta as the head coach is, the Falcons didn't do the thing that too often they've done, which is embarrass us on national TV. They always played their best ball seemingly in primetime, 7-3 over those 2 seasons. Even if you go back to his stint in 2020 as the interim coach, it pushed the record to 8-3 in primetime for Raheem Morris as the Falcons head coach. Now, Kevin Stefanski has a winning record from his 6 years in Cleveland in primetime, 7-5 over that span of time. A lot of Thursday night games, a couple of Monday night games mixed in there. But when you look at this 3-game sort of stint in primetime, the spotlight, this to me is kind of potentially going to be a measuring stick, right? We'll see if Micah Parsons is back for that Packers game, but the Packers are a team that thinks they're a playoff team, perennial playoff team every year. The Ravens obviously struggled last year, but that's a team that's a perennial playoff team. And then there's the Saints as well. But again, there's a measuring stick type of performance against 2 teams that consider themselves to be playoff teams. And we'll see if the Falcons can measure up to that stick. And then, of course, another divisional matchup against the Saints, against a hated rival under the spotlight. Can they make Tyler Shuck look embarrassed on primetime? So what are your thoughts on this 3-game primetime stint?
It looks like, just for me, they're going to have plenty of time to prepare, because that Thursday night game is almost like a mini bye, right? And then you get that going into against your divisional rival. I think that's going to help them. That can do nothing but help, because if somebody's got a little banged up, a little tweaked or something like that in the first 2 games, or in the first 3 games, they can, basically heal up, have a little extra time to heal up as they get ready to play for the big NFC South matchup. So, but I do find it interesting that you have these back-to-back, primetime games. So, hey, we're going to find out really quickly how a Kevin Stefanski coach team is going to be in the game. And then another thing that kind of stands out, in that stretch, right? So you got the first 4 games is Penix gonna squeeze in there at some point after the first month of the season? Is he gonna make his debut on Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens? So it's gonna be very interesting once we get through that first few weeks of the season. I'm just like, all right, if Tua's playing okay and Michael Penix wasn't ready to start at the beginning of the year, and he gets into the point where you get into October and he's just like, all right, I'm ready, coach. And Tua's not playing out of this world. I mean, if Tua's not playing out of this world, or if he's playing average, hey, man, do they put him in, or like what's going to be the barometer as to how you gauge whether or not to put Michael Penix Jr. in the game? Does Tua have the job? If he wins the job, is it his job to lose until he gets hurt, or is it kind of to be determined? So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how Kevin Stefanski can handle the quarterback situation, and we all know that he was handling that quarterback situation very weirdly when he was up in Cleveland. So hopefully, don't have a repeat of that.
Jarvis, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought it was, the Browns have the same starting quarterback for the last 6 years. It wasn't musical chairs every single week in Cleveland for the last 4+ years.
Do you know how many starting quarterbacks Cleveland has had since they've been back in Cleveland?
Yeah, it's been a lot. I think it's in the 30s. I think it's in the 30s. It's a big number. Maybe even the 50s. I don't even know. It's a big number, but yes. Hopefully,
4 of them last year, just last year.
Yeah. So we will see if we will spend 3 more months talking about who's going to be starting week 1 at quarterback. That's going to be a daily topic of conversation. So we will see. I can't answer that right now, but this Ravens game, I think, kind of starts arguably the toughest stretch of the Falcons season, at least on paper, but we'll see if it lives up to that hype. But I think the Falcons potentially can benefit because they'll get a lot of these tough matchups at home, and we'll break that part of the schedule as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So the NFL schedule release is here, and you can trade every game on Kalshi. Kalshi is going to let you trade, in predictions on the live market, from total wins to playoff chances to championship futures. For example, if you're feeling great about the Falcons 2026 outlook, you could trade on their chances to win the NFC South right now on Kalshi. You can trade on anything NFL related, from the division winners to who's going to get picked in the supplemental draft, and as the season outlook changes, you can buy in and out of your position live. Kalshi is available in all 50 states, so it's easy to jump on and follow along. And on Kalshi, you're trading against your peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in or out of your position. Trade the game, trade each win and loss, or trade everything on Kalshi. And for a limited time, download the Kalshi app and you can use code Locked On, and you'll get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi, trade on anything. So, Jarvis, before we continue today's episode, the Everydayer Club is the perfect place to go to join and become a member of the members-only Locked On Podcast Network Discord, where you can talk trash to all the Saints fans for that Monday night matchup, as well as those, as Jarvis put it, annoying Panthers fans. And you can find it all at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. So, Jarvis, getting into this middle stretch of the season, it feels like there's a 6-game stretch, if we're counting the Ravens game that we just talked about in week 5, that you could argue, at least on paper, looks like the toughest stretch of the season. But we know how things often go in the NFL, where before the season, this is going to be the tough stretch of the season, and then it winds up, once you get to the season, it winds up being a lot softer than you thought it was. And then you look at the soft part of the schedule, which we'll probably get to towards the back end of the Falcons schedule a little bit later on the podcast. And then all of a sudden it looks very hard, right? We saw that last year in that middle portion of the season, from like week 8 to 14, against the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Colts, the Panthers, the Saints, the Jets, the Seahawks. Like, no one was checking for those teams back in May of 2025 and be like, oh yeah, the Falcons will easily win a bunch of those games. And then they only wound up winning 1 out of those 7 games. And so starting the conversation in week 6 at home against the Bears, followed up by week 7 home game against the 49ers. Then they have a week 8 road game against the Bucs. Then they're back at home, air quotes. They're getting a home game technically, but they will be overseas in Madrid, Spain, to face the Cincinnati Bengals in week 9. But then they're back at home following that European trip at home against the Kansas City Chiefs before their week 11 bye. But Jarvis, what kind of stands out to you when you look at these 5 opponents leading into the bye week?
First of all, they're going overseas and then they have to come back and play the Kansas City Chiefs the following week. What in the Sam Hill is this going on here with this schedule? Can you get a bye after the overseas trip? or did Arthur Blank have to cash the check before they get into a bye week? Like come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? I don't understand this one. This one kind of is a little weird to me because, you know, when you talk about the logistics of this thing, like, I mean, I talked about this on the squad show on Thursday. I don't like the idea of, hey, you may or may not have a bye after going overseas. Like it's just normal to be traveling like that and going over there, getting on those long behind flights and having to go out and kind of experience the city a little bit and then play the game and all that stuff. So yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me that you would have a matchup like this right after coming from Madrid. Like get it by. Like, you got the bye right after the Chiefs. Just move it up one. You know, I know it's not that simple when it comes to scheduling, but it seems like teams who travel over there, they should have a bye at this point. And I guess this probably can't do that anymore because they're playing 16 now, or, you know, that's the plan to play 16 of these every year. So yeah, man, that's the thing that stands out to me. And also, you know, that Chicago matchup is very interesting. I'm really interested to see how Caleb Williams is playing at this point, you know, during the year, because we know how he finished it out. He was kind of up and down, but he had some super great moments in the playoffs, and he is starting to look like the guy. Chicago Bears fans are like confident now in their quarterback situation. So I think that's going to be an intriguing matchup. And also, Raheem Morris going to be coming home, right? You know, coming back into Mercedes-Benz as the defense coordinator for San Francisco 49ers. Like, that's going to be interesting. Let me ask you this. Do you think he deserved to be booed?
Do I think he deserves to be booed?
Or do you think he will be booed? Let's say that.
He will definitely get booed. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. You know, I don't hold any ill will against Raheem because, again, as I mentioned,
he got fired.
You know, like, hey, we didn't get embarrassed on national TV. Hey, man, you know, it's a low bar, Jarvis. I know it is, but like, I gotta take my W's when I get them as a Falcon fan at this point in time. So, you know, he was not a good enough coach. Is right. Basically the story with Raheem Morris. But for me, it's nothing personal. But Jarvis, you know, I find it funny, and tell me if you think this is a hot take, but I kind of look at that Chiefs game as probably the easiest one out of these 5 games, because I am not convinced, and maybe this is going to age terribly. I'm not convinced that the Chiefs are still the Chiefs anymore, because I wonder if they're off. You know, a lot of the stuff that Andy Reid is doing offensively was innovative in 2018, but I think the rest of the league has kind of caught up to that offense the last couple of years, and that's part of the reason why the offense is kind of stagnated the last couple of seasons. So maybe it's going to be better with Eric Bieniemy back, but to me that feels like going back to what worked, you know, 7 years ago, which I don't think is going to work anymore. So I'm not as convinced that the Chiefs are the juggernaut that we once thought they were. But, you know, do you feel like that's a bold take?
That's pretty bold. Patrick Mahomes is probably the best quarterback we've seen in this era.
That's fair.
So as long as he's healthy and by week, you know, if he's sitting there, you know, healthy in week 10, you know, yeah, like they should be definitely taken seriously, because if you're not, for whatever strange reason, you're not able to get to the quarterback and you're not putting any pressure, and this defense is not playing like they did last year, which is pretty doggone high bar, man, you're going to be in trouble. You will be in trouble, and you're going to be in for a long day if Patrick Mahomes has time to throw the football. So, yeah, that's pretty strong. That's pretty strong. That's pretty strong take there.
Okay, all right. We'll see how it looks.
Coming out hard, you know.
Yeah,
it's only May. You might need to slow down a little bit, man.
Yeah.
May, bro. You got June, you got July. Hey,
Yeah,
Still early, dog.
I can say the spiciest thing 6 months out from that game, and then like, what are you guys talking about? When the Chiefs are like 9-0 at that point in time, and like, what are you guys talking about? I never talked about the Chiefs being.
Let me go ahead and bookmark this video real quick.
You do that. You do that, Jarvis. But after this bye week, the Falcons come face to face with maybe what could have been against the Vikings because of the whole Kyler Murray situation. And before we get there, Jarvis, I do want to ask you: are we starting Michael Penix at this point in the season, coming out of the bye week, or is he starting before this, in your eyes?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, what's the record?
I don't know, Jarvis. every game with the Falcons is toss-up. We at 10 games, like it's probably like 5-5. I don't know. That's basically how the Falcons.
It's not. 10 games. Is that 5-5 or 4-6? Man, you better doggone play for the rest of the season. I need to see something.
Okay.
I need to be like Denzel Washington. I need to be able to lead with something. I need to lead this 2020 season with something. I need to have a good idea of what Michael Penix can or can't be in the NFL by this time. If you're 8-2, hey man, Mike, man, just ride this thing on out. You see what's going on, Playoffs has been a long time, Hey, man, we got to do what we got to do. But or if you're 8-2, shoot, what you got to lose? Kevin Stefanski, the man, he doing his thing. He the OC mastermind, baby. He got his groove back from the Minnesota Vikings days. You know what I'm saying? As the OC, So if it's extremes, if it's on both extremes, I want to see Mike.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like right there in the middle, but I don't know. I think it's gonna be a hard decision to make if you're sitting there still in the division and you're sitting at 6-4. It's like, that might be a hard decision to make.
Yeah, you got 3 division games up to this point, so you got an opportunity where you can win some games, especially against some NFC opponents that are going to have some impact potentially on tiebreakers. But you got a lot of divisional games to close out the season, and we'll break down sort of those pivotal divisional games as well as a potential rematch for Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So the NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And if you're looking to get closer to the action, FanDuel is going to give you a great offer to get you started. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Again, all you got to do is bet $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets just by getting started at FanDuel. And FanDuel is, of course, the place where you can check the stats, the trends, the matchups before making your playoff picks. And it's going to make this entire playoff run so much more exciting, whether you're betting on your favorite stars, doing same game parlays. It's all available for you. Pick the teams that you think are going to be in the finals, who's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. It's all there for you at FanDuel. So head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. And if you've ever opened your bank account and thought, hey, man, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Trying to keep track of all your subscriptions, your spending, your bills can get overwhelming fast. And that's where Rocket Money comes in. They're going to help you take control of your finances and especially do it all in one place. It's easier to build budgets and stick to them with Rocket Money because they're automatically going to categorize all your spending. So you actually can see, where your money is going, whether you're spending on groceries, on rent, on your mortgage, on entertainment, all these various things. And of course, if you have unwanted subscriptions, Rocket Money is going to help you find them and potentially cancel them. Right? It makes everything feel so organized and gives you a clear picture of your finances so that you can, grow your savings and monitor your spending. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. All you got to do is join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. So, wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons, breaking down this Falcons 2026 schedule. As we mentioned, hey, the middle portion of the season looks the toughest, and this back portion of the season, again, by no means a pushover with some of these opponents, but this is the opportunity where you're hoping to see the Falcons make that playoff push wherever they are, whether they're 8-2, 5-5, 4-6, whatever coming out of that bye week. And it starts with a road game against the Vikings, a little bit of a reunion for Kevin Stefanski. But more importantly, this is the what could have been game, right? Because there's a world where the Falcons could have landed Kyler Murray, and he's expected to be the starter in Minnesota versus the Falcons landing Tua Tagovailoa, as we just discussed. Is Tua still the starter at this point, or have the Falcons tossed the keys to Michael Penix? And, as you mentioned it, Jarvis, like we're talking about these last 7 games. If the Falcons wait until after their bye week to turn the page to Michael Penix, like, is that enough? Is 7 games enough to really get a clear picture of what Michael Penix? I don't think it is. So I kind of feel like if they're going to, make the move to Michael Penix, it needs to be coming probably at least a month earlier than that so that we can get double-digit starts for Michael Penix to get a full evaluation of him. But, you got these NFC North.
Think about it from this way, Free. Do they have to see what they have in Michael Penix? Because they didn't draft him. That was the previous regime. He just so happened to be on the roster, and he just so happened to play one of the more important positions on this roster. And I don't think it was a stipulation in Kevin Stefanski's contract that he has to see what Michael Penix has. It will behoove them to do it because you already got the guy in the building, and it will make sense that you will find out what you have in him. But I don't feel like they have to. That's why I say if Tua plays above average to good throughout the season, I don't think Kevin trying to doggone make no change, because does he seem like the guy that kind of goes against the grain? When people think he shouldn't, when we think he should, when you're trying to figure something out. Like, I think Kevin is a kind of go with what's comfortable, go with what's working kind of guy. And, I think he feels like he has to win in his first year because, things didn't go so well in Cleveland these past couple of years. And given the whole quarterback situation last year in Cleveland, I know that it's a little spotty for you and you kind of forgotten what happened in Cleveland. But I think he's out to prove something. So I feel like if he finds a good thing in Tua, or if he finds a good thing in Michael Penix, because, he was out there actually on the field throwing a football. So who knows? He might be ready to rock, and win the position in July and be ready to go, play a little couple preseason games and, and win the starting position. And then Kevin Stefanski does a big announcement, and he go to Magic City and announce that, Michael Penix Jr. gonna be the guy. He's gonna be my starting quarterback, and then get some wings and going on to the house. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, that could happen.
Okay, sure, Dave. Sure. I don't know why Magic City got brought up into that, but sure, yes, that's the way to do it. If you want to make a I don't know, whatever.
Sorry, man. I took us off the beaten path a little bit. It could happen. It's the end of the show. This is how we do it.
It is.
We get that.
I'll say this, Jarvis, before we break down the rest of the schedule. To me, they have a potential off-ramp at quarterback heading into the 2027 draft. We'll see if the 27 draft lives up to the hype, but you got to know, again, I don't want to open this can of worms on today's episode, but you're sitting here again. It's May, talking about the Falcons could start 8-2 with Tua. I'm like, sure, that's possible. It's May, so but short of that happening, the Falcons tying themselves to Tua for more than this season, if this is not a Russell Wilson situation in 1 year in Pittsburgh, and the Steelers have not been able to get that off ramp, and they're, as we discussed at the top of the show, they're stuck in QB limbo still 2 years later, waiting for Aaron Rodgers and Drew Aller and all this stuff. And so I don't want to see the Falcons doing that. And so to me, it's imperative to me that they have to figure out, is Michael Penix the answer? Or if he's not, then they need to be drafting a quarterback next year. How high they draft that quarterback, I don't know. but that's where I kind of stand on this. And so we'll see on that front. But let's wrap up looking at this schedule. Vikings road game in week 12, Lions home game in week 13. You got the Browns, Kevin Stefanski going back to Cleveland. This looks like a potential cold weather game. Again, if Tua is still a starting quarterback, is that is an issue? Then you got another potential game, week 15, December at Washington against the Commanders. Is this Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix rematch from 2024? Tie-breaking implications for the playoffs. And then you finish out the season with 3 straight divisional games where, obviously it's going to have a really dramatic impact on the playoff race. Week 16 at home against the Bucs, week 17 at home against the Saints, and then finishing up week 18 on the road against the Carolina Panthers. But for you, Jarvis, what stands out in these last 7 games?
It has to be the NFC South stretch to close out the season because, if you have 6 wins under your belt, more than likely 9 are probably going to get you the division. Barring any miracle type play from Baker Mayfield, and we know he's capable of that, right? Like, as much as I don't like him, he can be a good football player for a stretch because that's all you need, in order to be able to get into the playoffs and make some noise. So yeah, I think these last 3 games against the Bucs, Saints, and the Panthers is going to be huge, and you're going to be able to find out a lot about Kevin Stefanski. And by this point, we're probably going to have a good gauge of what he could potentially be in Atlanta in 2026 and going forward, based off what we've seen by this point, 14 games in. So yeah, I think this is going to say a lot about whether or not Arthur Blank made the right hire. I know that might sound like hyperbole, but nah, this is the stuff that matters, man, because this division has been right there for this team to just grab on a hold to and just ride it on out. But they just haven't been able to get to that point where they need to get to. And Todd Bowles seemingly has been able to figure it out for the past few years. So yeah, it's time now for the Falcons to make that jump, man. Either you make it now or, man, we still going to be talking about stuff for however long, man.
Yeah, I think it's ironic that for several years the Falcons were always in a position, by midseason, November, in sort of controlling their destiny, and then they would always kind of fizzle out at the end of the season. And my takeaway was like, if they just finish the season strong, they'll finally win this division. And then last year they won their last 5 games, but it's because they didn't get off to the usual. They did get off to a pretty decent start with the 3-2 start, and then lost like 5 consecutive games at that point.
Right.
And so it's just like, what version of the Falcons are you going to get? This is the frustrating thing with this football team, where it's like, as you mentioned, it's like you got to finish the season strong, but you can't do what they did last year, which is get into a rut in the middle of the season and talking about that middle game stretch. Last year that seemed like it was going to be soft. This year you're going into it where it's going to looks pretty tough. So, I think you're right. We're going to find out a lot about this Stefanski team. And, it's going to be about the vibes, right? What are the vibes going to be when we get to Christmas where, there's a potential, I know, for that week 16 game against the Bucs. Is that going to be a Friday night, Christmas Day sort of game or whatever? We'll see, right? If the Falcons are in the driver's seat, there's a really good possibility that some of these divisional games can get flexed because of the playoff implications. So a lot to unpack with this schedule. And, let us know how you guys see the schedule. Since we're not making win-loss predictions, but always want to hear what you guys see with the Falcons. Are they going to break into the, winning record column for the first time in 8 years in 2026? Let us know. Hit us up in the comments, the Discord for the Everydayer Club, as well as other places where you can find it all. We'll be back with more content coming your way next week, but I think your next episode will be joined by Locked On Clemson host to talk a little bit more about Avion Terrell and what he's bringing to Atlanta for your next episode. And so if you don't miss that, check it out. And if you never miss an episode, the Everyday Club is built for you. Ad-free version of Locked On Falcons, members-only Discord access, as well as sweet Locked On merch, as well as other perks. Find it all at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. Guys, it is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.